There was a time not too long ago when the Volkswagen Golf was seemingly unshakable from its top spot in the hatchback segment. This car, month after month, soared to the top of new car sales charts. And not even just for hatchbacks, but for all new cars in general. However, over recent years, the hatchback heydays are now over and SUVs have been claiming those top spots of the same new car sales charts. Also, Volkswagen have held their hands up and they've said that they've made some choice decisions for the Volkswagen Golf over the years, which have seen their king of hatchbacks crown start to slip. But they've promised that they've worked on those issues and they're rectifying it to make this car soar back up and be the best hatchback that money can buy. But have they done that? Well, the guys at the Marriott Motor Group have very kindly lent me the Mark 8.5 generation Golf. This is the latest generation Golf, the one that answers a lot of the previous issues. So in today's video, I'm going to dive into this latest Golf and find out whether it really is the best value for money hatchback. If you had any questions or queries about the Volkswagen Golf or wanted to find out the latest offers, then you can click the link down below and chat to someone at the Marriott Motor Group. Also, if you've got a Generation 8 Golf or previous and you're trying to decide whether it's worth upgrading for this 8.5, then I have got some clips side by side. So hopefully that will help make your decision. And if you do like new car reviews and car content, well, you're in the right place. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. So first of all, let's start by talking about the external changes for this latest generation car. And they are minimal from the outside when it comes to the 8 and the 8.5. But it was the Generation 8 which saw the most amount of change. That's where we got a much sleeker design, far more aerodynamic, and you also had a much lower nose. Now, the way that you can tell the difference between the 8 and the 8.5 is on the 8.5, you've got the assist systems, the ADAS box, which is just housed within the bumper. Previously, it was actually inside of the Volkswagen badge. Now, the reason they've moved it is, of course, with this latest generation, on the higher spec models, you can get a very funky light up frontal badge. And also, depending on what version you go for, you can get the frontal light bar as well, which I think looks really cool and gives it some serious personality. Now, the car that I have here with me today is the match trim, which has been reintroduced for 2024. And the match trim gets some really cool standard equipment, including a metallic paint colour as well. Now, personally, I don't think this grey particularly does the Golf any justice. It can look a little bit dull when the sun goes in, but there are some very nice shades of red and blue. Also, on the match trim, you get 17-inch Nottingham wheels, but these have actually been upgraded to the 18 inches. You also get keyless entry as start, but some of the biggest changes for the 8.5 can be found on the interior. How many changes you notice inside of this Golf will possibly depend on what version you're most familiar with. If you're familiar with the 8, you might not notice too many changes, but one of them that I really like is this new textured dashboard. Or should I say, not textured. It looks textured, it has this like brushed chrome effect, which I really like, but it's also really smooth to the touch. I will need to double check with the dealership the different specification levels, because online it said that the match didn't come with ambient lighting, but this model does have ambient lighting, and I was told that it only had upgraded wheels. I really hope this comes as standard because it's really lovely, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment and how you can change it and customize it. But if you're not familiar with the 8, then you won't have noticed that the centre console has changed. They've removed a lot of the unpractical gloss black. The gloss black may have looked nice at the start of owning a Golf, but over time it got covered in fingerprints and it would get scratched up and it really didn't wear very well. But in the 8, they changed it to this new layout, which I think is far more practical, and it still looks quite smart actually. You've got this new gear selector as well, which was introduced in the 8, which is much sleeker and smaller. I'm really glad that they haven't put it behind the steering wheel like they have on the Tiguan and other models like the Passat. You've got 2 cup holders here, and these cup holders can be customised. So you can either have quite large cup holder areas, or you can press this little button and that pops out a second, more practical cup holder and my favourite addition, which is an energy drink holder. So you've got this little bit that just kind of hugs in a smaller cup. Now I think this is really handy because so many times I'll get these smaller cans and they'll rattle around inside of the cup holders. So I'm really pleased that it's got a little, shall we not mention, the energy drink holder. You've also got a little bit of storage inside this armrest which can be pulled out and extended, and the armrest is finished in leather. The rest of the cabin, however, in this match is trimmed in cloth, but it does feel quite high quality, and you can tell that this bolstering is going to last over time. It's also been a key headline that on this latest generation they've gone back to physical buttons on the steering wheel, but actually for some of the generations of the 8 they had already gone back to physical buttons. But regardless of when it was introduced, I'm so pleased these are back. They're so much easier to use. Many people said that you do get used to the haptic buttons, but even when I was driving them I was constantly hitting the heated steering wheel and then wondering why my hands were getting really clammy and hot. So I think you can't beat a physical button. I still really like the fact that you do have paddles behind the steering wheel as well if you go for the higher engined models. Of course, the biggest change for the 8.5 is the introduction of this new infotainment system. This is the same infotainment system that you'll get on the new Passat and the new Tiguan, and I've tested those systems over time and they really are far better than the ones that they replace. They're so easy to use and they're really user friendly with really intuitive layouts, and every touch and prod it responds really quickly. You also have loads of shortcuts as well along the top. Shortcuts for things like your assist systems and also taking you to your driver settings. Like before, you've got loads of widgets to be found, but once again, you've got more widgets as you have more to play around with on this vehicle. Let's talk about that ambient lighting. As you can see, there are hundreds of colour combinations that you can choose for on your Volkswagen Golf. But if you don't fancy playing around and you want to quickly change your colours, you can use the voice assistant. Change my ambient lighting to pink.
Done. The colour is set.
Although this driver assistant can't do everything within the cabin, open my driver's window.
You can adjust settings on the screen.
It is helpful for finding systems within this touchscreen that perhaps you're finding a little bit tricky. Future versions of the Volkswagen Golf are going to come with ChatGPT as well, a virtual assistant which uses AI. This will be able to give you recommendations for places that you're going and places that you can eat, as well as doing fun things like reading you stories inside of the car. These systems aren't always the best to use and sometimes are a little bit of a gimmick, but either way, they make living with the Golf just a little bit more enjoyable. Now let's answer one of the issues from the previous generation car, and that was the climate control dials. No one was really particularly a fan of these touch sensitive dials. However, I think that once you get used to them, they are actually quite easy to use, but the biggest issue was they weren't backlit. Now that's changed for the 8.5. These are now backlit across this touchscreen, and also you have a shortcut here to bring up all of your climate settings. Whilst this touchscreen is still not going to be perfect for everyone, I think it's a vast improvement over the system that it replaces. Whilst this latest generation car may feel familiar, it has actually undergone significant mechanical changes. The most notable is the introduction of the Volkswagen Group's second generation plug-in hybrid powertrains. This upgrade replaces the previous 1.4 litre engine and 10.6 kilowatt-hour battery with a more powerful 1.5 litre engine and larger 19.7 kilowatt-hour battery. Thanks to this, the e-hybrid can achieve an impressive electric-only range of up to 88 miles. Whilst the more powerful GTE can cover 82 miles. Charging speeds have also improved significantly, with AC charging reaching 11 kilowatts and up to 40 kilowatts for DC rapid charging, compared to the earlier 3.6. Over the years, Volkswagen haven't messed around too much with the way that the Golf drives, and in my opinion that's no bad thing, because customers come looking at the Golf for a predictable, comfortable and safe drive, and that's exactly what they're getting. Even when the brand switched to mild electrification with the mild hybrid engines, they counteracted the weight with a little bit of a tweak to the suspension, and that meant that it soaked up bumps in the road really well, and it was still as comfortable as it's ever been. It still also gets the same 7-speed automatic gearbox, or you can also still get a 6-speed manual as well. The 7-speed automatic gearbox can be a little bit delayed in its take-up if you're in less powered versions, but if you go into the sport mode, this then sharpens things up slightly and it changes gear a bit quicker, and you still have the option of the paddles behind the steering wheel as well if you want to take over your manual driving, which I really like having the option of. You also still get a good option of engines as well as those mild hybrid petrols. You can still get a diesel and a plug-in hybrid with nearly 80 miles of range, which is really quite impressive. The diesel for me has always been one of Volkswagen's best engines. My parents still say that their 2-litre diesel engine that they had in the Golf was their favourite car ever. The torque made it brilliant for towing, and it was just a great long distance driver. When it comes to the petrol engines, you get a few different options as well. You get some less powered 1-litre engines, and then you get this, the 1.5-litre ETSI. It has the perfect amount of power for this size of car, and in fact it can feel really nippy at times. Although the Golf in this standard version is not particularly exciting. If you're looking for exciting, you've got the GTI, the Club Sport, the R. You've got those boxes ticked in other versions of the Golf. But in the everyday version, I would say that something like a Honda Civic is a little bit more exciting. It's got a bit more engine noise going on, fake or not, and just the steering is a little bit more heavy-weighted and engaging. The Golf, however, isn't trying to be exciting. It's trying to be practical. It's trying to be reliable, and it's always ticked those boxes really well. Now let's talk about safety, because I did mention it, and it's always been a very safe car for passengers and drivers as well, and it's now got more safety features than ever before. You'll find all the standard things like lane assist, anti-collision warning, blind spot sensors on the higher spec models, and you also get the traffic sign recognition and sometimes the slightly irritating speed alerts. But I've spoken a lot about how brands are adapting their cars to be able to switch these different systems off if you don't like them quickly, and Volkswagen have quite a good answer to that. They've got an assist system button at the top of the touchscreen or in this central area below the touchscreen, and that means that will take you straight to those systems which you can turn on or off. Now I do have one issue with this, and that's the fact that in this latest generation car, the Golf likes to turn itself off quite a lot. If you pull over and you're idling, it will turn the car off to save on your fuel economy, which is a positive in the long run. But then that means that all of those safety features go back on again and you have to go through the systems and turn them off. I really am being particularly picky right now, because other than that, there's not much that you can nitpick about when it comes to the way that this car drives. The rear interior space remains unchanged, and that means it's a really practical area for families. I really like the nice little touches inside the Golf. You get felt-lined door cards so items don't rattle around. You've got rear seat ventilation, 2 USB-C charge points, pockets on the backs of the seats, and you also get an extra pocket at the top to be able to pop your mobile phone. You also have ISOFIX fitments on both of the outer seats and on the passenger's seat as well. You still get a pull-out armrest with 2 cup holders and a little space in the middle to be able to pop an energy drink. The only negative in the rear of the Golf is you still have quite a significant transmission tunnel in the centre. You've got a nice flat bench, so that's not a problem, but when sitting in the middle, you will have to choose to either straddle this central tunnel, or you need to have really small feet or really small legs to be able to put your feet up behind. It just means that 3 adults might struggle sitting in the back of the Golf. But otherwise, everything else is very practical and user friendly. Now let's check out the rear of the car. It's a similar story here as the front design of the car. Changes for the 8 were significant, but changes for this 8.5 not so much. On the 8 we got the introduction of these new stacked rear lights, which I really like. Now on the 8.5 the main difference is the removal of, drumroll, rear tailpipes, or fake rear tailpipes at least. The previous 8th generation car had kind of chrome tipped fake tailpipes, and now they've done away with them altogether. We all know how I feel about fake tailpipes, but it has to be said that actually on the Golf they really weren't all that offensive. But I am glad that they've just gone for a much cleaner design. But one of my favourite things about the Golf is still present, which I'm really pleased about, and that's the way that you open the boot. So you open the boot by pushing on the Volkswagen badge, that flips open and then you can get inside. But my favourite thing about this is where they put the rear view camera. So they actually put the rear view camera inside of this badge. I think this is really clever because if you're driving around and it's muddy and mucky on the roads, it keeps your rear view camera inside nice and clean, which I just think is really smart. Now inside of this boot, which unfortunately is not electrically adjusted, that's one thing that Volkswagen still don't seem to do on their mainstream vehicles, you get an average 381 litres if you go for the petrol or diesel car. Now that does reduce if you go for the plug-in hybrid, but you get double the amount of range, double the size battery and the same amount of storage. So personally, I think that's a bit of a win. Inside of here, however, I think it's a really practical space. You've got that flat load area when you've got the boot floor in its upright position, but you can also drop down the boot floor and that gives you loads more room. There's also space for a spare wheel if you want to add one, and also if you don't want to add one, you've got loads more storage underneath there that you can hide items away. You also get 12 volt charging, you've got some luggage hooks and tether down points, really practical space, and not to mention you also get that through loading as well. Between the diminishing desire for hatchbacks and the ever-increasing competition from brands like Hyundai and Kia, the Volkswagen Golf has no longer found itself as the obvious answer every time for a new car. And competition is not a bad thing. It's lit a fire under the arse of the Volkswagen Golf, and they're not a brand which give up. Volkswagen have tried to answer all of the issues of the previous generation car. They've made it more fuel efficient, easier to live with, and also answered some of those usability problems. And I think personally, in this match trim, this car is now the best Golf yet. But let me know, what do you think of the latest generation Volkswagen Golf? Pop it in the comments down below. If you did want to check one out for yourself, or you wanted to find out the latest offers, then head over to the Marriott Motor Group. I'll pop it in the description box down below, and those guys will be happy to help you out. If you have enjoyed the video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up, and if you want to see more, then hit the subscribe button. Until next time guys, see you later.